Hybrid meeting of the City Council. Members of the public can view this meeting live on Channel 8, the city's website and YouTube. Live Spanish translation services are being provided for tonight's council meeting by telephone. Please dial 720-386-9023 and use code 104091 *.
Se ofrecen servicios de interpretación en español para esta reunión del Consejo Municipal por teléfono. Marque el número 720-386-9023 y utilice el código 104091 #.
The city clerk is the host of the Zoom meeting. Speakers will be able to unmute themselves when recognized. This time, I'll call the meeting to order. Ask the clerk to call the roll.
Mayor Huseman.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Alan Thomas.
Present.
Councilmember Madera. Councilmember Chacon. Councilmember Noble.
Present.
Councilmember Hurst.
Present.
Councilmember Kim.
Here.
Councilmember Ford.
Here.
Councilmember Douglas.
Present.
Mayor Huseman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Looking for a motion and a second to excuse the member not present. Mayor Pro Tem.
So moved.
Councilmember Hurst.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to excuse the member not present. Is there any discussion? Seeing no request for discussion, do a voice vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. This time, I'd like to invite everybody present remote to join us in a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, this time, do any council members wish to amend the agenda? Seeing no request to do so, I'm looking for a motion and a second to adopt the agenda. Mayor Pro Tem.
So moved.
Councilmember Hurst.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda. Is there any discussion? Seeing no request for discussion, do a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The agenda is adopted. We're going to move on to citizen communication. All public comment will occur during citizen communication except for public hearings. Persons registered to speak under multiple items will be allowed to speak multiple times. Per council policy, citizen communication is the time on our agenda for the public to address council on business and affairs of the city. City Council is not able to hear any comments at this time on land use matters that are before or may come before council. Please reserve your comments for the appropriate public hearing. As a reminder, we take your comments seriously, but do not generally respond to comments until later in the event during administrative business. We have 3 virtual speakers signed up. The first is Katie Southard.
Katie, if you're in the Zoom meeting and can hit *9 on your phone, or use the raise hand function in Zoom. Mayor Huseman, I do not see Katie in the meeting.
All right, Matthew Southard.
Matthew, if you're in the meeting and can hit *9 on your phone or use the raise hand function in Zoom. Mayor, I do not see Matthew in the meeting either.
Frank Cannon.
Frank, if you're in the Zoom meeting, you can hit *9 on your phone or use the raise hand function in Zoom. Mayor Huseman, Frank is not in the meeting either.
All right, thank you. Next up in person, do we have anybody?
No, sir.
All right. Thank you all for registering to speak with us tonight. We look forward to hearing from you at a future council meeting. Members of the public were able to submit written comments online and by mail. Written comments were not received by the deadline. If anyone wishes to speak at a future council meeting, please check the meeting agenda and city website for information on how to register or submit written comments. We're going to move on to notice council business. We have several items this evening. First is going to be a public safety neighborhood watch discussion. I'll invite Councilmember Kim to introduce his item.
Thank you, Mayor. We've had a lot of issues as far as within the community as a whole. Whether it's the north side or even the south side of Commerce City. Essentially, what I'm looking for is to request that public safety provide some form of presentation to City Council as far as what their current strategies are. Or plans for this year with regards to providing residents ways that they can protect their areas, protect their communities, be involved as much as possible, whether it's through neighborhood watch programs or whatever other avenues that public safety might be able to provide. On top of that, too, I do understand that there's residents need to also step up to be part of that watch program if that was something that was going to be discussed, but really just to do our due diligence to make sure that we, we are, the residents are pretty much, or we are all the eyes and ears for the city, for the police department and whatnot. So I'd like to make a motion to request to see if Public Safety can provide some of those ideas during a study session at a future date to be determined.
Can you clarify for your motion when exactly you expect the study session to occur?
I would say preferably this month, but here we are already at the end of this first quarter. So in a reasonable time, I'd probably say by second quarter if that's doable. But I would also defer to Mr. Rogers, the city manager, to basically provide some input, please.
Mr. Rogers?
Thank you, Mayor. Looking at the work schedule that we have currently available for times and dates, the most feasible time, next time that we have would be May 22nd.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Kim?
I got something on that for you.
Okay. Yep, May 22nd would be doable.
I have a motion to have a study session to discuss neighborhood watch and public safety. The study session on May 22nd. Is there a second? Councilmember Hurst?
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second to have this study session. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Hurst?
Yeah, I think it's great timing. I had a conversation yesterday with someone who's on the Public Safety Advisory Board, and I think they're really excited to work with our new chief on this neighborhood watch effort. I think they have some folks involved in that group that want to maybe take up that charge, but they wanted to, wait to get a chief on board and present their case, if you will. So even if we're waiting till May 22nd, I'd encourage that work to start happening. So there's more to kind of report on. Not saying we have to solve those problems by then, but it sounds like we have an eager group. The guy and our Public Safety Advisory Board has been working for quite some time, and I know this is of one of their interests. And I second what Councilman Kim said is, we have to have a program, and then we have to have our neighborhood step up and help. And I think that's a critical piece to it as well. And so, of course, I support this.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. And I did just want everyone to know, though, and give kudos and applaud to the Commerce City Police Department already, because we do have currently a neighborhood watch going, and even during COVID, I know in my area, Commander Kendall Grove started working with getting us a neighborhood watch going in the north and the south, and we even had meetings during COVID together. And then wanted to give kudos also to Commander Talon Darling, because he's the city's police for the operations division, and he's even ordering our neighborhood watch sign. So if you go to the Commerce City website, there is information. Like I said, the Commerce City Police Department, at least within my neighborhood watch, has been outstanding. So thank you.
Is there any other discussion? All right, I have a motion and a second to have a study session on neighborhood watch programs, public safety on May 22nd. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, next up, inaugural Commerce City Triathlon. Once again, Councilmember Kim.
So thank you, Mayor, again. And so this was just trying to figure out ways as far as, how can we as a city have something to our name to essentially attract people from outside cities to come into the city to generate some form of revenue. I think so with regards to this triathlon, it's no secret. I'm a triathlete myself. I am definitely heavily involved in those communities as well. But I would love to essentially try to attract more people from outside of Commerce City to kind of come here into the city to, you know, see what we've got to offer. And so this would be a full-on, full-blown Ironman, full iron distance, which is a 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike, and a 26.2 mile run. Now, no, nothing like that by no means. But this would be more of a smaller, you know, 200 yards of a swimming, or even and also adding in maybe a 10 to 12 mile bike ride, and then a 2 mile or even a 5K run at the end. But essentially, this would kind of allow people who thought about it, or even have maybe done something like this, to just come here and be able to give it a shot, and also maybe offer relay teams as well. But the biggest thing also that I think what this does too, especially when it comes to registration and you know, and what we have to offer is basically having small businesses be out there, set up tents to kind of promote their businesses, whether it's in the North Range or South Range, pretty much all of Commerce City, to kind of get together to kind of just showcase what we've got to offer here in the city as a whole. And, you know, I know there's a lot of other, I call them crazy people, and that's meaning triathletes, who will definitely come out and actually want to do that. And I think that would definitely help promote and generate revenue for the city as a whole. Would love to see something put together. I know I've put out there some ideas, but of course I'm not an expert in it, but, you know, would love to work with the Public Works folks and to help out in that department. I think this would be a great opportunity for, you know, our city to be shown in a positive light and a great manner, in my opinion. But so I'd like to make a motion to request that city staff start planning for potentially a triathlon event. Sometime I was looking at late August or September timeframe, based on weather patterns and historical weather patterns that we have in Commerce City, as far as with the weather, what it looks like then, what it feels like then, and whatnot. But I will again defer to Mr. Jason Rogers to provide his inputs.
Councilmember Douglas?
I'm sorry, I thought Councilmember Kim was ready to make a motion. I was going to second it, so.
He
It's
did
not,
make a,
the motion has not been made yet, right?
he did make a motion.
I'm sorry?
He did make a motion.
Oh, he did. I'd like to second that then.
I have a motion and a second to direct staff to hold a triathlon this year. Mr. Rogers?
Thank you, Mayor. Staff's had an ability to take a look at Councilmember Kim's request. Thank you very much for sharing that in advance. I think we are wholeheartedly supportive of taking on this opportunity to try to plan for a triathlon. There are some logistical challenges that really limit the practicality of us being able to deliver that by an August-September timeframe. That being said, I think my staff and myself are always willing and welcome to working with the council member on defining a project or a triathlon, excuse me, that would be able to meet the needs. I'm not going to pretend that I am an expert in this field of triathlon planning. I know PW, PD, and PRG have some high-level information to share back about some of those logistical challenges, if the council would like to hear. But I think what I can commit to is a desire and a willingness to deliver the triathlon, and working with the council member and ultimately coming back to staff with what that, council, what that might look like as far as implementation and delivery. But there are, like I said, items that need to still be worked through on a number of different aspects, from physical resources and capacity and bandwidth and programming.
Councilmember Kim?
Thank you, Mayor. I think one of the other things too is ensuring that when this plan is put together, that we are not looking at utilizing, obviously, I mean, we want to basically utilize what we have within the city. But of course, but we want to make sure that we're able to showcase the city as well. So obviously, bless you, regarding, our standard use trails that we do have currently within the city, I get that, but I would love for us to be able to venture out further than that. And I know that would require a lot more volunteers, especially for public safety, to be out there controlling traffic. I'll help control traffic if necessary. I mean, I'm always here, so that's all. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, motion is second to direct staff to have a triathlon this year. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, next up, we have a revision to ordinance 2300 on third-party food delivery service fees. I'll invite Councilmember Noble to introduce your item.
Thank you very much, Mayor Huesman.
Please turn on your microphone.
Thank you very much, Mayor Huesman. This is a suggestion from BREDAC, the Blue Ribbon Economic Development Advisory Committee. This would be ordinance 2300 on third-party food delivery service fees. They were limited during COVID, and that when we were addressing the pandemic. It was ended because the emergency ended, and so we would like to reinstate the third-party food delivery service fee. It will help our businesses because they don't receive that fee, and it makes it appear as if their orders are quite expensive when they get them delivered. So they were very eager to have some limits on it again, just as there were during the pandemic. So my motion is to revise ordinance 2300 on third-party food delivery service fees to make it permanent.
All right, I have a motion to revise ordinance 2300 on third-party food delivery service fees to make it permanent. Is there a second? Mayor Pro Tem?
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion and a second to revise ordinance 2300. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Hurst.
Before we vote on it, can someone please reread it? Reread ordinance 2300, just so we are all on the same page?
Actually, Mayor, if I may, the ordinance is quite long, but I was going to comment that 2300 was revised by 2320 and then subsequently repealed, I believe, on July 31st, 2021. So as far as I'm aware, there are no existing ordinances in play that would be revised. So essentially, it would be a request for a new ordinance to make, to have a cap on food service delivery service fees permanently. And if I may just kind of express some legal concerns with that, just so you're all aware. Throughout the country, there were quite a few local jurisdictions that passed, as you all probably know, temporary ordinances that did have caps, that place caps on the food service delivery fees. There were a couple of jurisdictions outside of Colorado that attempted to make those permanent, including San Francisco, I believe, a city, other cities in California and New York City. Those jurisdictions have, are involved in pretty long lawsuits by the food service delivery platforms, namely DoorDash, Uber Eats, potentially others. The arguments, there are quite a few arguments. Some of the arguments that actually have passed a motion to dismiss level right now are constitutional arguments, taking arguments, kind of a regulatory taking arguments, and interference with contracts, because these, it's my understanding that the food service delivery platforms have contractual agreements with the restaurants that sort of specify where the commissions go to and have an agreement on the commission levels. So just so you're all aware, that, while certainly it's possible to draft and pass an ordinance, making those caps permanent, we're likely to encounter resistance, probably in the form of lawsuits or similar reactions. So,
Thank you very much for your information, Ms. Geiger. I would have been interested in hearing it earlier than this evening, but I think that's what happens when we're shifting through people the way we are right now. I am certainly open to any other conversation about it. Again, I will repeat that this was recommendation of the Blue Ribbon Economic Development Advisory Committee and an ordinance that they sought. And I based my information on the information that I was provided in order to make, to complete the form that we are asked to provide in order to include these on notice council business.
and I should note that some of this is very recent information. Some of the litigation, there were orders as recent as just the last month or so. The one in New York City still pending. There's been no court order on the motions to dismiss that are pending in New York. So, yeah, it's an evolving landscape.
Well, I don't know where to go from there then, based upon your legal advice, other than to take it to a study session and have a discussion about it so that we can all look at the plus sides and the downsides. So I would recommend then this ordinance, that the concept of an ordinance that would limit third-party food delivery service fees be a study session topic.
Mr. Rogers?
Thank you, Mayor. If council so chooses to move forward with a study session, we still have availability on that May 22nd date as well.
And Councilmember Noble, it may be helpful to understand the objectives behind the service fee cap to see if there's, we can explore other types of ordinances or in conjunction with cap fees. I understand it's to protect the restaurant industry, but if there's more specific objectives, that would be helpful.
I think it's a particular challenge for small restaurants in Commerce City to be able to thrive. And I would suggest that our Economic Development Director be part of this conversation as well on the night that we have the discussion, if the City Council so chooses.
All right, now I have a motion to have a study session on May 22nd to discuss third-party food delivery service fees. Is there a second, Mayor Pro Tem?
Second the motion.
Have a motion and a second to do so. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Hurst?
Yeah, I think on this one, I do want to be educated a little further, especially with kind of the ongoing, because without the emergency clause or the emergency ordinance that we had in place, that was what it was predicated on. But it might also bring a good point that maybe we can get an outside meeting, like I hate to throw this out there, but like a Saturday meeting where we can meet with the BREAD Act, look at their recommendations and see how we can have policy discussion around those things to try to move the city forward with their recommendations. So, but I think this is just one of the things that they've brought up, and they probably have some other good points as well.
Is there any other discussion? All right, I'm not going to be in favor of this motion to have the study session. If there's pending litigation out there, then it seems kind of fruitless for us to sit down and have a conversation over implementing such policies whenever we don't even know if they're going to be legal in the future. So my recommendation would be to wait until after litigation has come out and rulings have been made by courts in order to determine what our options are. Then that's the proper time to sit down and have a study session figuring out what our options are. So not in favor at this time. But the motion and the second is to have a study session on May 22nd to discuss third-party food delivery service fees. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that's going to fail 4-4. Okay, next up is outdoor service areas for restaurants and bars in Commerce City. Once again, Councilmember Noble, you can introduce your item.
Yes, thank you very much. And following up on Councilmember Hurst's comment, this is yet another suggestion from the Blue Ribbon Economic Development Advisory Committee. This would revise, and Ms. Geiger, please correct me if I'm wrong on this, Ordinance 2282 with, which had temporary authority to permanent, and it would allow restaurants to have outdoor service areas for restaurants and bars. My motion is to request an ordinance authorizing outdoor service areas for restaurants and bars.
Councilmember Douglas?
Second that, please.
A motion and a second to direct staff to prepare an ordinance that would allow for outdoor service areas for restaurants and bars in Commerce City. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Hurst?
Yeah, I think this is a good motion, but I want to know, is there, what's the, seems like we would have allowed this before COVID if there wasn't other reasons. So is there like a public health, like the Adams County Public Health Department, is there a concern with them for something like this, or is there anything else in the way besides us allowing it?
Well, I can say, Councilmember Hurst, I'm not aware of any restrictions on indoor dining at the moment, and these particular ordinances were premised on that health concern. I would defer to city development to a large extent to understand more of what spaces restaurants can use, because it's my understanding that restaurants can certainly have outdoor dining already. And so I guess from legal standpoint, I would want to understand exactly what this ordinance would call for that would be different than kind of what's permitted right now.
Okay. If I may,
Councilmember Noble?
yeah. We have a very awkward situation here. We bring these motions forward because we're supposed to put them on a form, and then in order to then debate it at a later point, but at least we can consider it now. So I'm getting information that would actually could color whether I bring a motion forward at the time of the meeting rather than when we have the discussion at a point in the future. All of those details, I hope that we can discuss at the time and have investigated, but certainly having an outdoor atmosphere in Commerce City at the restaurants would be very welcome. Though it would be for some of those that did not have patios, but instead had to use their sidewalks and so forth for the restaurants. It was written into the ordinance at the time that allowed it. So this is, again, a suggestion of BREDAC. I was hoping that we could get it accomplished before the weather becomes really great so that restaurants would have the opportunity to make the change. But if you would like to have a study session discussion on this as well, I'm happy to do that too.
And if I may, Councilmember Noble, my understanding of the prior ordinances that were the temporary outdoor service area allowances provided that restaurants could use parking spaces and right-of-way, which could pose safety issues and the like. And with respect to the parking spaces at the time, folks weren't driving to the restaurants necessarily or using as many parking spaces. So I think that, wasn't as much an issue back then. So certainly my advice would be, it would be helpful to have that broader conversation of what even the community is interested in with respect to the outdoor dining. If they're looking for expanded area and if they want to use the sidewalks and sort of what implications that has from just emergency access and the like. But I hear you with respect to the timing. So I guess I'll defer to Mr. Rogers on,
I think we brought this forward because the community was interested, so
yeah.
that's what we're doing.
Thank you all. With respect to study session, and this is obviously an open question to the council. As I look at our continued work schedule, we are fully subscribed through the month of April with a number of different items and items that were to be discussed from most recent meetings for that May 8th meeting, pushing us back down to the 22nd. Now, once again, you all should have in your packets the city council work schedule that outlines those items that have been identified for the 2 study sessions in April. If you find that this matter is somewhat higher in priority, more than willing to engage with you on what items should shift down to allow for that time to be had and to be discussed by staff with council on the matter. But as it stands right now, what we have available would be the May 22nd date.
Okay, if I may, I'd like to hold this until administrative council business. By that time, we will have had the discussion of the work schedule, which is the last item on the agenda, and we'll be able to have a better idea on it at that point. So I will postpone my motion, if the seconder agrees, to administrative council business.
Councilmember Douglas?
I will agree to that.
All right, we're going to hold off on that motion until later in the evening. All right, we're going to move on to an approval of a letter to the Department of Public Health. I'll invite Assistant City Manager Tolbert forward to introduce the item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. At a meeting a few weeks ago, you asked that we prepare a letter and address it to the Colorado Department of Public Health regarding concerns about Suncor and their regulation and oversight of Suncor with some of the problems that have happened. In your packet is a draft letter that was prepared by Dr. Russo, then reviewed by Mr. Hayter and our outside counsel, and is here tonight for you to determine if the letter is fine for the mayor to sign, if there were any changes you'd like, or if there's something missing that you would like to include. So really be glad to, if anything you want to add or delete, or if you're good with it, that's great, and we can move forward. So.
Thanks, sir. Does anybody on council have any questions for staff? Councilmember Noble.
Thank you. I read the letter. It seems to me that some of the editing went a bit awry, probably a group editing issue. There is a paragraph that begins with given, and there's a comma following given, and the rest of the paragraph doesn't really fit. It's also the Department of Public Health and Environment. But I would suggest sending that back and having some of the paragraphs reordered. You can tell when there's a discussion of HAL, H-A-L, that typically you would put in parens what HAL means, and that is done, but that paragraph clearly got moved down the page, and the HAL then is used higher up in the document. So I think it just needs another look, editing-wise. And my recollection is that Mayor Pro Tem Alan Thomas asked for this letter to go to federal and state agencies, not simply the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And she is nodding yes.
It is addressed to the Department of Health, but there are any number of agencies that will get copies of it. So
Okay.
that's the way that Dr. Russo handled that. If you'd like us to do it differently, we can do that, but
I think I would send it back for revision before it comes back to us again.
Are there any other questions for staff? All right, this time looking for a motion and a second in regards to the letter. Councilmember Noble,
I move that the letter go back to staff for revisions, and we'll vote on it later.
I have a motion to continue this item, allowing staff an opportunity to revise the letter and take care of any typos or grammatical errors. Councilmember Hurst? Can you say that again, please?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to continue this item, allowing staff an opportunity to revise the letter for grammatical errors and content and everything, and bring it back to us at a later date. Is there any discussion? Seeing no request for discussion, do a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The item is continued. Now we're going to move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda includes items that are routine, procedural, informational, self-explanatory, or non-controversial. These items are presented to council for a single motion and vote. Any member of council may ask to remove a specific item off the consent agenda for further discussion and a separate vote. Tonight, there are 8 items listed under the consent agenda. Does anybody on council wish to remove an item off the consent agenda? Councilmember Noble.
Yes, I'd like to pull Resolution 2023-040.
All right. Are there any others? Seeing none, I'm also going to pull Resolution 2023-037 and Resolution 2023-34. All right, this time looking for a motion and second to approve the consent agenda as amended. Mayor Pro Tem,
So moved.
Councilmember Hurst.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as amended. Will the clerk please read the title and take a roll call vote?
Mayor Huseman, real quickly before I read those titles, can I lower the shades? We're getting glare on our broadcast real quick.
Sure.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
Let's go ahead and take a 5-minute recess while we do that.
Thank you.
In the meeting, we were in the middle of the consent agenda. We have a motion and a second to approve it as amended. The city clerk is going to read the titles and take a roll call vote.
Minutes of the February 27th, 2023 special meeting. Minutes of the March 2nd, 2023 special meeting. Resolution 2023-18, a resolution authorizing award of a contract for design and construction services for the automated traffic signal performance measures project to Lighthouse Transportation Group, LLC. Resolution 2023-32, a resolution finding substantial compliance of the annexation petition in case AN 258-23, known as the Quick Trip annexation, and setting a public hearing to determine eligibility for such annexation. Resolution 2023-35, a resolution adopting a city council policy to govern electronic meeting procedures as council policy CP number 26. Your vote is open.
All right, consent agenda is amended, passes unanimously 8-0, 1 excused absence. I'm going to start with Councilmember Noble. You pulled Resolution 2023-040. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I want
Microphone, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I want to include as topics the toxins that were revealed in the cultivando data at the news conference last week, as well as the potential radioactivity under Exhibit A DC schedule, so that those topics are also on the agenda.
Would you like to make a motion to amend Resolution 2023-040 to include those items?
Yes, I will move to include the cultivando data in Resolution 2023-040 for our discussions in Washington, D.C. this week.
I have a motion to amend Resolution 2023-040 to update Exhibit A for the schedule for speaking at different departments across Washington, D.C. next week to include data that was obtained from Cultivando in those discussions. Is there a second? Councilmember Douglas.
Like to second that, please?
I have a motion and a second to amend Resolution 2023-040 for the purposes stated. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Noble?
No, thank you.
Councilmember Douglas? Seeing no request for discussion, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor?
Mayor, may I read the title?
We're not voting on the actual resolution. We're just voting on the amendment. As soon as I get to it, then you're going to be first on my list. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously to amend Resolution 2023-040. Is there any other discussion concerning Resolution 2023-040? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2023-040 as amended. Mayor Pro Tem?
So moved.
Councilmember Hurst?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2023-040 as amended. Is there any discussion? Seeing no request for discussion, will the clerk please read the title?
Resolution 2023-40, a resolution approving certain council positions and providing related direction for federal advocacy.
I have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2023-040 as amended. The title has been read. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, I'm going to start with Resolution 2023-34. Interim City Attorney Geiger has identified an error in the resolution. Therefore, I'm looking for a motion and a second to continue that to April 3rd. Mayor Pro Tem?
So moved.
Councilmember Hurst?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to continue Resolution 2023-34 to April 3rd. Is there any discussion? Seeing no request for discussion, do a voice vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next up is Resolution 2023-037. This is a resolution that is affirming the city council's position on certain legislative items that are in the Colorado legislature right now. There are positions on this document that I do not support and therefore cannot vote for it, which is why I've pulled it. So that being said, I'm looking for a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2023-037. Councilmember Noble?
I move to approve Resolution 2023-037.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Oh, I was going to, I won't second it.
You are seconding? You're not, okay. Councilmember Chacon?
I second.
Have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2023-037. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please read the title?
Resolution 2023-37, a resolution adopting certain advocacy positions on legislation pending at the Colorado General Assembly.
All right, I have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2023-037. The title has been read. All those in favor? Any opposed? And the motion is going to fail 5-3. All right. Next up, we're going to get into our public hearings. Tonight's first public hearing will be on the rezoning of the property generally located at 8442 Uinta Street. It is ordinance Z-967-23. I'll remind council of the following. Use the public hearing only to ask questions and gather facts, but not express opinions or indicate how you will vote. Council members are not permitted to provide testimony if you wish to participate in the decision. You should rely only on the facts developed in the hearing and in the record and apply those facts to the criteria in the Land Development Code. This time, I'll invite this interim city attorney to address council.
Thank you, Mayor. At this time, I'd like to ask the following. Is there any council member who cannot hear this matter and make a determination fairly and impartially based on the record before you and the facts and evidence as developed at the public hearing? Okay, let the record reflect that no member of council has indicated an inability to be fair and impartial. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, ma'am. This time, I'll open the public hearing, and I'll invite Nathan Chavez, city planner, to provide the presentation.
Good evening. The property owner of 8442 Uinta Street is seeking a zone change from agricultural to I-2 medium intensity industrial. Dylan, can you, thank you. For their business, K&K Construction, a construction contractor with outdoor storage. Both uses are allowed by right within the I-2 zoning district, which is needed to bring the property into legal and conforming status. The property outlined in red is surrounded by primarily industrial with some residential uses. The gray is unincorporated Adams County, and any color is C3 zoning. Of note is the Installed Properties PUD to the west, which is meant to create a railroad-served industrial project. This is an aerial of the site taken on September 5th of 2022. K&K Construction has a primary office surrounded by parking in the northwest corner of the site. There's 2 storage buildings located here and here, and the rest of the site is occupied by outdoor storage. To the southeast is the Burlington Northern Railroad, as well as Highway 2. In the 2018 Irondale Plan, which is the sub-area master plan for Irondale, the future land use plan designates the subject property as general industrial with anticipated zoning of I-1 and I-2. And the whole area just about is designated as general industrial within this plan. These are photos of the current conditions taken in October 17th of 2022. And I went out today, and the only difference between today and October was it's a little more overcast today, and there's a public notice sign out currently. This is the southernmost entrance of the site. This is the center entrance of the site. And then this is the northernmost entrance of the site with the primary office building shown in the background. So, this site plan was created during the review process for the application. It emulates what the previous aerial showed, with the primary office in the northwest corner, outdoor storage occupying most of the site, and then the 2 accessory structures. Both the DRT and Planning Commission had no concerns with the proposal. The zone change meets the LDC approval criteria, which can be found within the packet, and is consistent with the general industrial land use designation and the stated goals of the 2018 Irondale Plan, which include minimizing conflicts between low-intensity uses and higher-intensity uses by consolidating future uses, promoting more compatible uses such as industrial and commercial along major transportation corridors, and reducing residential pockets adjacent to industrial areas. Lastly, K&K Construction is a long-lasting business, and the zone change brings a city property into compliance. As of today, staff has only received one phone call from the public asking about what the future business will be, and at this time, K&K Construction will remain as it is today. And they asked for assistance for potholes on Winter Street, and our staff directed them to our Public Works Department to help resolve any issues that with potholes. In addition, the applicant received 5 responses from distributed neighborhood flyers with no objection to the zone change, and those flyers are also within the packet. At the February 7th Planning Commission, the commission members voted 4-0 to forward the proposed zone change to this body with a recommendation for approval. Staff is available to answer any questions, and the applicant is also present to answer any questions that City Council may have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your presentation. This time, does anybody on council have any questions for staff? Councilmember Noble.
Thank you for your presentation. Are there homes in this area? I'm looking at, with 360, and it appears there might be.
Yes, that is correct. There are homes to the north. Specifically, these two are within Commerce City, but it is worth noting that both properties are owned by the current applicant, Mr. Chris Zur. And then there are also homes to the west within Adams County. And I went out there today, and there's between 2 and 4 residential uses, but there's also industrial uses scattered throughout, or I guess in between all those homes as well. And in addition, the reason staff is supporting this zone change from agricultural to industrial is the Irondale Plan does call out this whole area to be industrial, and sometimes that means there are older residential, properties, or you may have agricultural properties, and over time those properties or those uses are phased into what the plan calls for.
And what's the difference in uses between medium intensity and light intensity?
Our medium intensity in this instance, it typically has more manufacturing, outdoor storage, as well as heavier trucks enter and exit the site. For light intensity, that's more like an office flex, very minimal manufacturing, and there's no outdoor storage allowed.
And a construction company would fall into what category?
A construction company, I believe, would fall into I3, but in this specific instance, it's a construction, a general contracting, construction contracting. So they do a lot of storage of materials, movement of materials, and there isn't actually any construction going on the site. It's mostly storage of materials and some larger trucks, but nothing large scale that we would see in an I3 zoning district.
So it would be I1 or I2?
I'm sorry, Councilwoman Noble, you're asking for the
company that's there.
Oh, right now it would be I2 because of the outdoor storage primarily. It needs I2 to have that use, that accessory use.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Douglas.
Thank you, Mayor Huthman. So this business is already located there, correct? They're doing business there with an agricultural zoning. Can you tell me how that happened?
Yep, so that is correct. The current business exists there, and they have been in existence since around 2007, 2008, I believe, and Chris Zur is here to confirm that after I've answered. And one of the, I guess, full background, in 2006, a future land use plan amendment was passed by council to change the underlying future land use designation from agricultural to an industrial use. And there was some confusion back in the day where the 1998 Irondale Comprehensive Plan, instead of, I guess a great example is in the 2018 Irondale Plan, the underlying designation for future land use, we call them public state or commercial or agricultural. And in the 1998 plan, we called those underlying designations I-2 zoning, I-1 zoning, residential zoning. And so there was some confusion on what exactly was approved in the past. And so the future land use plan amendment was approved. The applicant was supposed to come in for zoning, and it just took some time in order to finally bring that application to fruition and get us here right now. And that involved working with code enforcement, working with the property owner to bring that site into compliance and have this ordinance created to be seen by you all.
So they've been doing business at this location since 2007 or 8?
There was business conducted at this property, and specifically K&K Construction was existing since 2006, 2007, 2008. And they weren't in compliance, and we worked with code enforcement and other city agents, other city departments to have the applicant or the property owner apply for an application for a zone change.
Okay, thank you. On slide number 7 of your presentation, I can see when I make the photo larger, it looks like there's debris that's in the yard. Can you tell me what that is and what its purpose is?
Is it the, I'm sorry, is it this photo on the screen currently, or is it within the packet? I believe there's also.
It's within your presentation that you just gave. So on slide number 7 is off to the right-hand side. If you enlarge the screen.
I believe that's as large as I can load the screen up. And all of this is the outdoor storage that they use for their contracting business, and that storage of materials. And I believe specifically they deal primarily in asphalt, and this is the asphalt detritus that they have as a result of their business.
So they're storing asphalt that's been broken up somewhere and then brought back to the site?
I believe so, but I would defer to Mr. Zur just to confirm in this instance. And it is also worth noting that there is a fence on the surrounding the property, and I believe it is 6 feet it is 6 feet, and no outdoor storage can go above that 6-foot requirement. And so it is all screened from, or it all should be screened from the right-of-way and surrounding properties.
Okay, so you said it can go above or can't?
It cannot.
All right. Thank you.
Of course.
Are there any other questions for staff? Does anybody on council have any questions for the applicant? All right. Mr. Gibson, do we have any virtual speakers?
No, sir.
Do we have any in-person speakers?
No, sir.
Do we have any written comments?
No, sir.
Would the applicant like to address council? All right, at this time, we'll close the public hearing. I'm looking for a motion and a second to approve the findings and recommendations of the Planning Commission on case Z-967-23. Councilmember Ford?
So moved.
Councilmember Hurst?
Second?
I have a motion and a second to approve the findings and recommendations of the Planning Commission on case Z-967-23. Is there any discussion? Seeing no request for discussion, do a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously to 0, 1 excused absence. Now looking for a motion and a second to introduce ordinance Z-967-23 and approve on first reading. Councilmember Hurst?
So moved.
Councilmember Ford? I have a motion and a second to introduce ordinance Z-967-23 and approve on first reading. Is there any discussion? Seeing no request for discussion, will the clerk please read the title and take a roll call vote?
Ordinance Z-967-23, an ordinance amending the zoning ordinance and zoning map of the city of Commerce City, Colorado by rezoning the property generally located at 8442 Uinta Street, thank you, from Agricultural District AG to Medium Intensity Industrial I2. Your vote is open.
All right, motion carries unanimously, 8-0, one excused absence. We're going to move on to our second public hearing. It's on ordinance Z-945-17-19-20-21-22 for Nexus North at DIA PUD Zone Amendment 3. This public hearing was continued from February 6, 2023. I will remind council of the following. Use the public hearing only to ask questions and gather facts, but not express opinions or indicate how you vote. Council members are not permitted to provide testimony. If you wish to participate in the decision, you should rely only on facts developed in the hearing and in the record and apply those facts to the criteria in the Land Development Code. This time I'll invite the interim city attorney to address council.
Before I do so, I believe technically the hearing was closed in the last meeting, so it would be appropriate to move to reopen it.
Okay.
And then I'll do the spiel. At this time, I'd like to ask the following. Is there any council member who cannot hear this matter and make a determination fairly and impartially based on the record before you and the facts and evidence as developed at the public hearing? Seeing none, let the record reflect that no member of council has indicated an inability to be fair and impartial. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, ma'am. This time I'm looking for a motion and a second to reopen the public hearing. Councilmember Hurst,
So moved.
Councilmember Ford. I have a motion and a second to reopen the public hearing. Is there any discussion? Seeing no request for discussion, do a voice vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0, one excused absence. We will open the public hearing and invite Dalton Guerrero, city planner, to provide the presentation.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. My name is Dalton Guerra, City Planner with Commerce City Planning Division. This is a request for a PUD amendment to permit additional land uses and modify bulk standards for Planning Area 3 within the Nexus North at DIATC. This is an aerial of the subject property there to the northwest. You will notice that the site is currently vacant and surrounded by existing warehouse buildings. It is currently the last vacant property within the DIATC PUD to be developed. Here are some photos of those existing warehouse properties. There's a Lowe's warehouse as well as Amazon and a number of other unspecified tenants buildings out existing, already constructed. Planning Area 3, which is what's being amended tonight, already permits a wide variety of uses, including commercial, retail, as well as industrial. This amendment is to add 3 specific warehouse and distribution land uses. And those 3 specific uses are already permitted in adjacent planning areas, and in fact have already been constructed, as you saw in the site photos, such as the Lowe's and the Amazon warehouse. Again, just a close-up look at Planning Area 3, which is the subject property. Planning Area 1 surrounds it to the south. So in your packet, you can see this is a land use table from the existing PUD as well as the proposed PUD. The 3 uses in gray, that being produce, storage, and warehousing, retail sales in conjunction with warehousing and storage general, and under Planning Area 3 column, currently say NA in today's PUD zone document, which means it's not allowed. The request here is simply to change it from NA for those 3 to R in red, which would allow it by right. And Planning Area 1 already has that right, as you can see on the left column underneath Planning Area 1. In Planning Area 2, it's allowed with a conditional use permit. That's what the C represents. So that is the basis of the request for tonight. This is a snippet of the permitted land uses in the existing land use table. These come from the industrial list of uses. Just wanted to note that under Planning Area 3 currently, today, these uses are allowed by right, and that is manufacturing of metal, manufacturing of wood, manufacturing of machinery, etc. Additionally, part of this request is to reduce the maximum front yard setback for planning area 3 from 100 feet to 0 feet. The reason for that is to give flexibility to the applicant and staff to move this building to the south if needed. With a maximum setback of 100 feet, it would have to be 100 feet from that south property line. Reducing it to 0 allows it to shift further south. And a couple other things to note on the site plan here is the bay doors for trucks would be facing south towards the existing development and not to the north. And all truck traffic would flow to the south to Quintero Street. There is no access permitted along East 88th Avenue to the north or Buckley Road to the west. This is to illustrate that truck access and circulation. You'll notice that nothing is going to the north to 88th Avenue. Everything flows south and to the east towards Tower Road. The staff analysis for this request is that it meets the planned unit development approval criteria. The original PUD did allow for the 3 land uses being requested in planning area 3. It just wasn't allowed in planning area 3, but it was permitted within the planning area 1 and 2. The surrounding area is already developed with the existing warehouse uses, as you saw in the site photos, and this is the last vacant parcel within Nexus North to be developed. Planning area 3 is more than 1,000 feet away from any residential subdivision. There is no vehicle access or truck access to the north along 88th Avenue, and the DRT believes that the building and the site can be designed in a way to mitigate any potential impacts to the north. That includes enhanced architecture, enhanced landscaping, and the bay doors facing south as shown on the conceptual site plan. On December 6, 2022, the Planning Commission voted 5-0 to forward the PUD amendment to City Council with a recommendation of approval. Staff is available for any questions. The applicant is also here to answer questions. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Does anybody on council have any questions for staff? Councilmember Noble.
Thank you very much. This was originally office, is that correct?
Office was a permitted use allowed in planning area 3, but there was no change in the zoning or the future land use plan for this property as a whole. So the original land use table does allow for office in planning area 3.
And what are we voting on? Simply the setback?
It is simply to change the existing land use table as shown on the screen here. The red Rs are currently NA. This request is to allow those 3 land uses in gray to be allowed in planning area 3, where they are not allowed today.
And when you say it's 1,000 feet from residential, are you talking about the residential that will be built or the residential that has not been built?
Existing residential to the northeast.
Okay, so it's quite closer than that. And there is a school also on 88th. Those homes are going to come down to 88th, which will be basically across the street from this. And then the new park, Second Creek Farms Park, is also in that area as well. It's one of the things that I've talked about several times on the council since arriving here is the proximity of industrial to homes. And it is, if you consider that those homes are coming, that is just a development that hasn't been finished yet. Buffalo Highlands, Second Creek will be up against 88th. What is a guarantee that 88th will never be open to truck traffic?
That's a good question, Councilman Noble. I would defer to a public works staff member to the future state of 88th Avenue. Unfortunately, I am not aware of the history of the closure of 88th Avenue or what the potential is to open it again in the future to vehicle access.
Yeah. Is someone from Public Works here that could address it?
Hi, good evening. What was the question? I'm sorry, I was.
88th, a portion of 88th is currently closed to truck traffic. I'm asking if anything can ever occur in the future that will open it to truck traffic. Is this permanent? I mean, permanent, no Nobody coming in saying, let's take a vote on changing it or anything?
And I'd have to understand the reason why it's closed in the first place. I'm unaware that it was closed for truck traffic, but I can look into that.
Okay, thank you. Then I will reserve judgment on this application.
Councilmember Hurst.
I think the biggest thing I see in here is that there's no ingress. We would have to completely rebuild the drainage and everything to be able to bring truck access in from 88th. So you can open the road in the future, and it still would take quite the construction project to bring that accessibility in from the north side. And that's why I was going to ask, maybe it's important to talk about the setback changes, because when I first hear that, it sounds like we're making a pretty significant change, but as I read through it last night, it sounds like we're trying to move the property further away from 88th, or the building further away from 88th, so it has less of an impact on the surrounding. Is that correct?
That's correct. That is the intent of the reduction of the setback from 100 feet to 0.
Sorry, so it can move south further away from 88th?
Correct, correct.
And then you said all truck parking spots, or all parking spots essentially with dock doors, will be facing south towards the developments that are already.
That's correct. Effectively, it would keep every truck to come on the property to the south. It would never go near 88th Avenue.
Councilmember Douglas.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Huesman. On slide 23, I can see that the docking doors are to the south. However, it looks like there is ample parking available to the north of the building and also to the west. And so there probably would be trucks allowed to park there.
As I understand it, with the conceptual site plan at hand, the parking to the north and to the west would only be for for employees?
Oh, just for employees?
Correct.
So there would be no truck parking there at all?
That's correct.
Like the tractor trailers or?
Correct. The intent is for all the truck trailers and trucks to be parked and docked on the south side of the building.
And how high do you anticipate these buildings to be?
Unsure at this time. We would know more details about the building design at the development, the PUD development permit stage.
And this was initially cited as to be future office flex?
That's
And
correct.
now this is this like a rezoning?
This is not a rezoning. This is a amendment to the current zoning, the PUD zoning document, which effectively simply allows this type of use to go on this property.
But now it would go from office flex to industrial, is that correct?
That's not correct. The future land use plan calls for office flex. The future land use plan is still intact for this property as office flex. Office is still permitted underneath Planning Area 3, but the request is to also permit warehouse land uses in Planning Area 3.
So this is something new then that's coming forward to ask that this can be used as industrial?
It is a new land use for Planning Area 3, but it is not new to the area. In Planning Area
Right.
1, this has always been a use by right.
But this specific site is what
This
I'm asking
specific
about.
site, that is correct. It's not allowed currently, but the request tonight is to allow it.
To allow it. Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for staff? Councilmember Chacon.
It says retail sales for part of it. What type of retail sales would you offer in that space too?
It's a good question. Give me 1 second as I look at the land use table. So currently, retail sales underneath Planning Area 3 would include flea markets, pawn shops, retail business stores, tattoo parlor, thrift and consignment store. That's it for retail. There's also underneath other commercial uses, there would be eating and drinking establishments, brew pubs, catering services, restaurants with or without drive-throughs, fuel sales, et cetera.
Thank you. All using those 2 access points to enter and exit, though?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
All using the same 2 access points to enter and exit off Tower Road?
Correct. For this site specifically, it would only be off of the cul-de-sac to the south. But as a whole, Nexus North is accessed from Tower Road, those 2 access points.
And the northeast is the Arsenal, right? Where there's going to be trails?
Correct. There would be a regional trail. This is conceptual, of course, but there would be a regional trail proposed on this site to connect to the Arsenal.
My concern is also with accessibility then, with that many retail sales, or that just many shops opening within that space, and then it also be with industrial as well. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for staff? This time, does anybody on council have any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, do we have any virtual speakers?
Mayor Huseman, we do not have any virtual speakers, in-person speakers, or written comments for this item.
Okay, thank you. Does the applicant wish to address council?
Good evening, council. My name is Paul Thurston. I'm here representing Becknell Industrial. We're the developer that's developed all the industrial in that area. We developed the 1 million square foot Lowe's building, the Amazon facility, GE Hire, the Scout Freezer building. Just to simplify this request, we're simply looking to have a standard light industrial zoning classification like all the other properties we have there. This remaining site does not allow for warehousing, and to have an industrial site that doesn't allow warehousing, I just don't know what to do with it. You know, we'd like to develop this property consistent with all the industrial property in the park, but to not be allowed to develop for warehousing uses, it puts me in a weird zoning classification that I don't really know what to do with. So I'm seeking to allow for those permitted uses that were outlined in the presentation.
Thank you, sir. Does anybody on council have any questions for the applicant? Councilmember Noble.
Excuse me, I have a question for you. Do you happen to know why 88th is closed?
It was just never designed to have access go to the north. I mean, it's a master plan industrial park, and a staff and the previous developer never wanted truck traffic to go to the north. So it's all been designed to go the other direction. We have no intention of trying to redevelop the site or change the master planning. It's just the northernmost lot and at the end of a cul-de-sac there, and it was just never designed to have trucks up that way. I think it was probably with the intention to not mix industrial, truck traffic with residential uses up there.
Why is this one the only one that has this particular designation, unlike the rest of them?
That's a good question. This was, I think it was master planned before we purchased the property. And I believe that there was some hope that this would be an office building or a flex building at some point. We're industrial developers. That's all we do. I don't really believe an office building will ever want to locate in an industrial park. But here I am. I'm kind of stuck with the zoning, and I'm trying to develop it, and this is what I would need to do to develop that property. But I don't know why it's the only site in the park that has that classification.
Thank you.
Councilmember Douglas.
Thank you. I'm going to ask a question that I hope I'm allowed to ask, and if I'm not, then I hope that I will be corrected. You stated that you have developed this entire area.
Yeah, if we could maybe throw the slide up, I can point the slide, just the park plan. It's in your presentation, or our presentation. Maybe the third slide there. That one, yep. Yeah, so the big building on the top, we developed that one. That's the Lowe's million square foot distribution building. That's immediately adjacent to the site. Across the street to the left is, it started as a speculative development, and it's now been purchased by Scout, who's a freezer company. They've retrofitted the shell of the building, and they're going to provide freezer warehousing. To the south of that is still vacant, but we've developed that. I think it's a 379,000 square foot industrial building. To the south of that one, on the big one on the west side, that's GE Hire and TJ Maxx, I believe, are the two tenants in that building. Across the street to the east is the Amazon building. And then the three buildings to the east of that, we did not develop those properties. That was another developer.
So have you purchased all of this as,
Yeah,
with plans to develop?
Correct. We purchased all of these with plans to develop as industrial.
Okay, so when you purchased the intended site that we're talking about tonight, you knew that it was intended to be office flex?
Yeah, yep.
So you purchased it knowing that?
Yep.
All right. That answers my question. Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? So when you answered another question, you said that what you're looking for is the availability to develop this as industrial.
Yep.
But currently, Planning Area 3 allows for industrial in that area.
It doesn't allow for warehousing and,
Doesn't allow for warehousing.
yes.
There's a difference between warehousing and industrial.
Yep.
Warehousing is a type of product that can go in an industrial development, but you're not currently forbidden from continuing to develop this into industrial property. What you can't do is slap up another tilt-up that's going to do nothing but have warehousing and 10 employees in there, as opposed to what is allowed on page 6 of the PUD amendment. You're allowed to have food manufacturing, machinery manufacturing, metal manufacturing, textile and wood manufacturing, all industrial uses.
Yeah,
So to come here and stand there and say, we just want to be able to develop it industrial,
Well,
that's kind of being disingenuous, wouldn't you say?
Maybe this is a conversation about speculative development, which is how all these properties began. You know, we built them not knowing who the end user is going to be. It could be a warehouse distribution building. It could be the distribution arm of Apple products or another Amazon. We don't know that, but we can't take the risk and invest $16 million in the community without the ability to potentially land a warehousing user. Like half the uses of industrial are warehousing uses. You're cutting out half the pool of our potential tenants, and it just will never get developed with this current zoning.
So then I'd have to go back to Councilmember Douglas's question. You purchased the property knowing you couldn't build a warehouse there. Why would you make that investment if you know you can't put what you think is going to go there?
I mean, it was a larger property. It was like 190 acres at the time, and we needed the entire, but we couldn't buy just the sites we wanted. We had to buy the entire park to be able to do the Lowe's deal. That's the reason why we purchased all of the property. It was, if we had our druthers, we would have not purchased this piece, but to be able to do the project we needed to do, we had to buy the entire park. Excuse me.
Has any effort been made to market that property to allowable usage and companies that are allowed to use it without this PUD amendment?
Yeah, I mean, the current marketing staff, Chris Thompson is the marketing agent. He's aware of the zoning. He's been working on trying to find a user for this particular property, trying to sell it, trying to find, potential buyer and/or users for a build-a-suit. There's zero interest for an office use in an industrial park. That's the problem.
I get it, but you again have how many different industrial uses that are available to be used right now without this PUD amendment? So I fully agree, trying to get an office building in an industrial park, not the easiest thing to do, but you have a whole list of industrial uses that are used by right today, that you don't have to go through this PUD amendment to continue on that. So I'm confused why it is we continue to go back to this office flex argument whenever you're not required to build office flex under the PUD that you currently have under Amendment 2. You're allowed to build an industrial.
I'm simply looking for a light industrial, traditional zoning use. And right now, it doesn't allow for warehousing. I don't understand the resistance to warehousing in an industrial park. What is, there's a disconnect here that I'm not getting. What is it? Like, I guess, what does Commerce City want to happen on this site? What does Commerce City envision for this property?
That's a conversation that we can have outside the public hearing, but at this time, I can't provide testimony as far as what I envision should be there in order to answer
Understood.
your question. Apologize for not being able to do so, but I think I would get a stern reaction from the individual seated to your right if I did. Okay, that answers my questions. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Any other questions? Did you have any rebuttals, any comments that you wanted to make as a follow-up?
No, thank you for your time.
All right, thanks, sir. Appreciate it. All right, no virtual speakers, no written comments, no in-person speakers, no rebuttals from the applicant. I'll close the public hearing. This time, I'm looking for a motion second to introduce ordinance Z-945-17-19-20-21-22 and approve on first reading. Councilmember Hurst.
So moved.
Councilmember Ford. Second. I have a motion and a second to introduce ordinance Z-945-17-19-20-21-22 and approve on first reading. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Hurst.
Yeah, I think considering the design of the business park and the layout and the setback change, I think this gives opportunity for another business growth development in Commerce City. SpaceX builds rockets and warehouses. There's a lot of things that are occurring in that space that are still opportunities out there for us to continue to get involved in as a city. And so I think giving ourselves a wide variety of options in our marketplace is the best move forward for us.
Councilmember Douglas.
Yes, I believe that there are reasons why it was proposed to be office flex or industrial without warehouse to begin with. So that is what I can see from this.
Is there any other discussion? I think that half of this PUD amendment is really good. Moving the building further to the south and doing away with that setback from the south, I think that's a great idea. It gets it away from 88th Avenue, gets it that much further away from homes to the north. And I don't really take issue with that. Where I struggle with is this building can be industrial already. And, you know, one thing that we continually harp on over and over and over is those first employment jobs. And you have a warehouse at 160,000 square feet and you employ 10 people in that warehouse. That's significantly different from having a manufacturing facility employing 50 people in there and having that many people out there that can support other businesses to come along, especially in that trade area. I struggle with, let's just slap up another warehouse because it's the easiest thing to do. And that's one of the reasons why we're in the situation that we're in of X amount of homes and zero commercial, and X amount of industrial warehouses and zero commercial. Because all these warehouses that we have that provide a needed service are not providing us the employment base that we need in order to continue to grow that. So I'm going to actually make a motion to amend ordinance Z-945-17-19-20-21-22 to remove the change in permitted land use designation as noted on sheet 6 of PUD amendment number 3 document. Mayor Pro Tem?
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion and a second to amend ordinance Z-945-17-19-20-20-21-22 to remove the change in permitted land use designation as noted on sheet 6 of the PUD Amendment Number 3 document. Is there any discussion to the amendment? Councilmember Hurst.
So in 3 years from now, if they haven't sold it and the market's saying that there's nothing that's fitting inside that use, what do we do? So we're gonna have a potentially vacant, undeveloped lot there in a successful business park. I just wanna make sure that there's if we decide to go down this path, there's an off-ramp.
Councilmember Douglas.
Yes, Mayor Huseman, could you please explain your amendment just a little bit more in detail rather than just the numbers? Because I'm not following.
I'm removing the provision that allows this to go from not being allowed to build warehousing and distribution to being able to build warehousing and distribution. That restriction from being able to do so would still exist if this amendment passes and the ordinance passes.
Thank you.
You know, if in 3 years, if this property hasn't been able to be sold as a manufacturing facility or other designated use that was initially put forth, then it'll be up to that city council at that time to determine what to do with this PUD amendment. But, you know, one of the things that we continue to see over and over is a developer comes into a city council, and not just ours, and slaps up a PUD and says, I'm gonna build this. And then comes back 2 or 3 years later and says, well, now that I've built everything else here, I can't build this other piece of property that was originally part of the PUD. And it's just disingenuous. Just come forward with what you want to build the first time and stick to what it is that you want to build. But you can't go and slap up a whole bunch of warehouses and a 1 million square foot warehouse and this warehouse and that warehouse and then come in and cry and say, well, because of all the warehouses, I can't build this. We didn't build the warehouses. We didn't tell you to build the warehouses. You built the warehouses. So I can't continue to just support this idea that we're just going to continue on this process of, okay, well, you built this part of it, so let's go build another part that's the exact same. It's just not how we need to be doing business. And like I said, there's the amount of employees that are going to be employed in another warehousing distribution. You got a 1 million square foot warehouse out there, and how many employees are employed there? 20? In a 1 million square foot? 30 maybe? It's not the best use of the space. And if we continue to say we want more of the commercial, we want more of the amenities and this and that, we got to get the daytime population to increase. And we're not going to get the daytime population to increase if we have another 160,000 square foot warehouse with only 10 employees in it. It's just not going to work. Any other discussion on the amendment? All right, I have a motion and a second to amend ordinance Z-945-17-19-20-21-22 to remove the change in permitted land use designation as noted on sheet 6 of the PUD and number 3 document. Did you have something for me before I vote?
Me?
Did you have some?
Just FYI, I believe the Planning Commission findings and recommendations were without the conditions. So in the event the amendment passes, you'd need 5 to vote in favor to overrule the recommendation, that's all.
Oh, we'd need 5 to pass it, so.
For the amendment, it doesn't matter, but the
Gotcha.
actual motion, yep.
All right. All right, all those in favor of the amendment? Any opposed?
No.
And the amendment's going to pass 6-2. Looking for a motion, we already have a motion and a second to introduce ordinance Z-945-17-19-20-21-22 and approve on first reading as amended. Is there any other discussion? Seeing no other request for discussion, will the clerk please read the title and take a roll call vote?
Ordinance Z-945-17-19-20-21-22, an ordinance approving the Nexus North at DIA PUD Zone Document Amendment Number 3 to permit additional land uses and modify bulk standards for the property generally located at the southeast corner of East 88th Avenue and Buckley Road as amended.
And the motion carries 5-3, one excused absence. All right, we're going to move on to administrative business. First up, per section 2-2001 of the municipal code, council may vote to counsel a study session. 5 or more members have indicated they will not be available for next week's study session. I'm looking for a motion and a second to cancel the March 27, 2023 study session. Councilmember Hurst.
So moved.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Second the motion.
Have a motion and a second to cancel the March 27, 2023 study session. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, do a voice vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, per council policy, except for emergency or unforeseen items, council members are encouraged to submit administrative business items by the Tuesday before the meeting with another council member's endorsement. Do any council members have administrative business items of an emergency or unforeseen circumstance? Councilmember Kim.
Thank you, Mayor. So I should have been here at the March 6th meeting. Unfortunately, I couldn't. But one of the motions I did want to make was with regards to Mr. Renee Bullock and his actions during the boards and commission meeting. I would like to request or make a motion to request Mr. Renee Bullock to come back to the boards and commission meeting to discuss his behavior that he presented himself during that, to include what was, believe it was the February's Youth Commission meeting as well. And if the rest of City Council would like me to go into further detail as to what was said, I could do that here publicly and live.
Councilmember Kim, for clarification, are you talking about the Boards and Commissions Subcommittee that Mr. Bullock appears at, or the full council?
Talking about during the interview, the Boards and Commission interview that occurred, I think it was back in January. I know Mr. Roberts was there, along with other city council members. There were some actions that, some behavioral issues that I had with him at that time that was, I believe was unprofessional, in my opinion.
Sure, but you're asking him to come before the full body or before?
Boards and, for the Boards and Commission.
Boards and Commission Subcommittee?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Just for clarification, who is this individual? Is this a board member or who's this?
Yes. The individual sits on our Youth Commission Board, appointed by the Boards and Commissions Committee.
Just a point, I'm not aware of authority to compel individuals to appear before you all, so I'm not sure. The council certainly has the authority to move to remove individuals from various boards and commissions, but I'm just not aware of the ability to compel individuals to appear.
Right, so what you're telling me then is, so there were some actions that occurred during the boards and commissions interview process back in January. To include, there were some other behavioral concerns that were in presence of during the youth commission. So if that is more so a conversation to have privately, I can do so, but it sounds like to me that the only motion that I could make at this time is to remove Mr. Bullock from the commission. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Copy that. Well, for now, I will stand down on the motion then at this point to discuss further.
Absolutely, and obviously, you can all move to ask Mr. Bullock to appear voluntarily or direct staff to, the staff liaison to reach out if that's something you're interested in doing.
So for clarification, you're saying to come forward in front of city council, discuss his behavior? Is that what you're saying? That can be requested?
You can certainly ask, yeah, for voluntary appearance, just not compel him.
Okay, so then I guess that would, then let me change that then. I would say that would request to have Mr. Bullock come before city council then to address his behavior as noted during the boards of commission interview back in January, to include the youth commission as well. That occurred, I think it was earlier, mid-February timeframe.
I have a motion to direct staff to invite Commissioner Bullock to come before the city council to discuss concerns raised by Councilmember Kim regarding his behavior during the boards and commission interview and the youth commission meeting that followed said interview. Is there a second? Councilmember Chacon?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to direct staff to extend that invitation. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Hurst.
Yeah, I'd like to suggest just a quick amendment to where we were originally going of letting that conversation occur at the boards and commission meeting first. And if something comes out of that, bring it back to full council.
Mayor Pro Tem?
At this point, I think I would feel comfortable at coming before the whole entire council so we're all aware of what's going on and what actually happened.
Councilmember Noble?
I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was in the queue.
Is there any other discussion?
Mayor Huesman, real quick, is it the desire of council that this occur during a regular meeting of the city council or a study session?
I do believe that the last time that we had to take action regarding a board member from one of our boards, it occurred during a regular city council meeting.
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right, I have a motion to direct staff to extend an invitation to Commissioner Bullock to discuss said behavior as raised by Councilmember Kim at the board and commission interview and the subsequent youth commission. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's going to carry unanimously, 8-0, one excused absence. Did you have any other items, Councilmember Kim?
No, sir.
Councilmember Noble?
Thank you very much. I had...
Microphone, please.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. It's one of those nights. I had requested that we continue the item for an ordinance authorizing outdoor service areas for restaurants and bars to this point in the agenda, but the work schedule is under council reports. Is the work schedule a council report?
No, ma'am, I think it was just the best location to facilitate a discussion with the council. It's more about a discussion with me, with council on some changes that we're making to the work schedule, but also what we currently have scheduled out through the end of May to discuss whether or not certain items may need to be reprioritized or if you are comfortable with how we're moving forward.
So do you have a suggestion on how I can do this if we haven't discussed the work schedule yet?
You can obviously ask me to bring this matter forward now, kind of talk through the changes, talk through what we have scheduled, planned, and then you can then take action thereafter.
All right, Mr. Rogers, would you bring forward the work schedule discussion at this point, please?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Let's try to just simplify this process. Make a motion to direct staff to explore allowing this outdoor seating area in right-of-ways and bring back these options to the city council at the April 3rd meeting so that we can discuss on whether or not we wish to take action before the spring dining season ramps up.
April 3rd meeting, sir?
Yes. That gives you 2 weeks. You don't have a meeting next week to prepare for, so I'm confident that you have all the time in the world. Plus, you've got all these fabulous staff members sitting behind you that are more than willing to support you in this endeavor so that we can move this along instead of trying to figure out what day is going to work for a study session and this and that. Go out, explore, bring it back to us, tell us what's feasible, what's not feasible, and let's get this done instead of kicking the can down the road for another 2 months, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your incisiveness. I appreciate that.
So, Mayor Pro Tem? Thank you, ma'am. I have a motion and a second directing staff to come back to us on April 3rd with this. Is there any discussion? Seeing no request for discussion, do a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you all for your cooperation. Look forward to seeing the recommendations of staff on April 3rd. Councilmember Noble, did you have anything else that you needed to discuss?
No, sir, I don't believe my button is up either. Thank you, though.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, let's move on to reports. Oh, did anybody else have an administrative council business item? No? Great, now we'll move on to reports. City Manager Rogers, please.
Thank you. Dylan, if you can bring up the work schedule. So just as practice going forward, what council will find in your packet, regardless of study session or regular meeting, will be your city council work schedule. Now, what you find is what I will say is probably the last iteration of what will be the work schedule. We are making certain changes to that to include what I would call various priority timeframes. And what I mean by that is that we will be also including a priority system that looks at certain requests, either coming from the council or staff, that identify high urgency, high impact, all the way down to low urgency, low impact, that also then has various timeframes. For instance, maybe 1 to 2 weeks for those issues that are high urgency, high impact, or something that will be scheduled into the work schedule as time permits that may fall under a low urgency, low impact. The whole purpose and point of being able to include this additional information on this work schedule and for us to engage is to allow for this discussion to occur about priorities and being able to ensure that staff is aligning our thought process with the expectations of council. And if certain things need to change, we can make those accommodating changes during that discussion. So you'll be seeing that for the April 3rd meeting going forward, but just to kind of make you aware of that's what's forthcoming. For this particular meeting, I'd like to be able to take you through what we have standing for various meetings between now and the end of May. As you'll find for April 3rd, we have a rather robust agenda, still permitting around 8:20. What I would share as we've started to collect some data, based on our estimated end time, we have seen that we've gone over that end time by 47 to 48 minutes. So I would assume that if there are additional items such as the one that you raised, Mayor, that probably would be the one that, that we would only add that and limit any additional matters or items just to make sure that we're meeting that automatic adjournment time at 10:30. On April 10th, we have what's become our standard practice of our study session being split by a URA discussion. What you'll find on that study session is between 4 to 5 items for discussion. That keeps us with what we've also been able to determine well within that automatic adjournment time. Study sessions, we've been limiting ourselves 4 to 5 items. Once again, giving at least half an hour, 45, or an hour, depending on the complexity of the matter, to be able to be engaged in a fully immersive discussion with the council, to be able to get consensus or direction. On that, you have a requested item of the PRG Advisory Committee Annual Update, our standard discussion around pavement management, concrete flat work. We have an introduction to the Land Development Code rewrite. It is an opportunity for you all to engage with our consultant on expectations and desires of what you're looking for based on the various development standards, zone districts, and other, I would call it, performance standards on the type of uses that you would like to see going forward that will align with our comp plan update. And then lastly, a discussion in and around phase 2 of our impact and user fee. This is our user fees, difference between user fees and impact fees. Impact fees are to mitigate the actual impact on the built environment, while our user fees are the fees associated with the submission of a development plan, an entitlement application, a business license, and so forth. This will be a presentation of that information for you all so that we can get consensus and or the direction on where you would like us to continue to explore. Moving along on to April 17th. Once again, we have another rather robust meeting. The majority of the discussions to occur in and around changes to the international building, residential, plumbing, mechanical, electrical, all of the codes that we have that pertain to building. That is on the April 17th meeting, and we are currently slated for that agenda to end exactly at 10:20 p.m. Moving along, we have April 24th. We had a requested study session for the custodial services program update. We also have a discussion in and around changes to the sales and use code by our finance department. We have then a discussion around the Adams County homeless programming, but I would look at that as more broadly Commerce City's approach to homelessness. Additionally, we have a discussion in and around the City Council automatic adjournment discussion. I raised that back in February that I would be bringing this matter for discussion and topic based on research. And obviously, as we're continuing to work through priorities and setting agendas and where we stand, some feedback and I would say hopefully open conversation with council on potentially alternatives to what our current standard of practice has been with meeting times. And then lastly, we have a requested study session by council on marijuana licensing overview, code changes, and a moratorium discussion in and around that, which would bring us to 9:25 p.m. on that. Once again, we have been trying to keep that to 4 to 5 minutes just in case if there is overage so that we don't run up against or run afoul on the 10:30 timeline. May 1st, once again, not going through each individual item, but kind of just summarizing. You have a mix of consent, public hearing, and items on first reading, and then a discussion around potentially other items that may have been continued from any previous meeting, which would leave you at 9:50. The executive session that you see there is simply a placeholder. Hopefully one is not needed. But what I would share with you, taking that off, we end around 9:15 p.m. on May 1st. May 8th, while it may seem as though that we have one item scheduled, C-Click Fix program demonstration education, that is actually our new CRM system that we would like to display, work through, run through, not just with council, but also with the community about how to leverage that new system for being able to provide complaints, issues, concerns with respect to a number of different nuisance code issues that we have. What we are also intending to place on that agenda, as requested as first available, will be a discussion around abandoned vehicles that was requested back in February, a discussion around backyard hens for May 6th, and also for May 6th, discussion around environmental and equitable priorities that was raised by the body. That would bring us to 4 items and applying our typical time frame of either an hour or 45 minutes, it puts us just a shade under 10:30. Which then brings us to our next regular meeting on May 15th. As we currently stand around an estimated end time of 7:15 p.m. However, as we continue to identify and prioritize certain operational needs and or policy changes for us to remain effective and to meet level of service, I do believe that agenda will start to be eaten up by other items. There will be some items that we are discussing internally that may present themselves here on first reading in response to the MyC3 program and other identified trends that we need to address in the community. So those will start to end up on this schedule over the course of the next 2 to 3 weeks as we continue to work through some of just the basic details or final details here internally. Then leaving us with May 22nd with 2 items, one being the newly added Neighborhood Watch presentation, in addition to the existing leased vehicle program update that you see on the screen. And with that, I will stop there with our actual schedule. But once again, I think as we do this on a weekly basis, that this will allow for us to have that open conversation on how to best prioritize, shift, or identify opportunities to have certain conversations that you have raised in the public forum during those meetings.
I can't tell if it's optimism or naivety that you think that we're going to finish at those times that you've specified on all those, but good luck.
I like to think of myself as an optimistic individual.
We'll be optimistic with you. Anybody on council have any comments or questions regarding this? Councilmember Noble?
Thank you very much. I have a few. The last column on the work schedule doesn't have an identification at the top of it. So when you have the amount of time, what does that time represent?
You mean the estimated end time, ma'am?
If that's what it is, then okay.
Yes,
No,
ma'am.
I'm talking about 30 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes.
Yeah, so that's the estimated time that we anticipate that item to take.
And what is the staff told they have to present? How much time do they have to present?
I think it's truly when they're looking at the matter and whether it's controversial in nature or straightforward, depending on the request. Staff is identifying how much time they believe is necessary to get through that. So for instance, we have 30 minutes for citizen communication. 9 times out of 10, we go somewhere between 0 to 30 minutes on citizen communication. There are the rare occasions where citizen communication has been immensely robust, particularly in and around the rental registration discussion that we had with residents that came before us. What you find are those estimates that are being identified by staff and how they believe that the conversation will go with council.
So they're guessing how long the questions will take? Is that what you're saying?
They're estimating based on what they believe is their
Okay,
experience before
my
council.
experience has been sometimes some of these reports from staff can use up the whole 30 minutes without being able to get questions in, or they use up a substantial amount. So if you could factor in that we do have questions about various things, it would be helpful.
I would already say staff is factoring in their staff presentation into that timeframe.
Okay, I'll talk with you about that one later. I noticed that the Parks, Recreation, and Golf always does an annual report. That's the advisory committee, but none of the other boards and commissions do. So what is it that prevents, why do they always do it and why don't the others do it?
Can't speak to, sorry, Dylan was trying to get my attention, so Mr. Roberts, by all means.
Do you mind? Thank you. Councilmember Noble, thank you very much for that question. We've actually established a yearly update calendar, and all of the board and commissions will be coming before you.
Okay, we'll open it up to that, everyone then, that's good. And then the other question I have is about campaign finance reporting. And the motion that we passed was to have that item back within 30 days. And I don't see it on the work schedule through the end of May.
I know that legal is working with the clerk's office on that. That should be ready relatively soon, so perhaps in the April, maybe the 17th, is that, or the?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Noble. I met with the Assistant City Attorney last Tuesday. We discussed the specifics of the motion, the request. He should have something to me either by the end of this week or beginning of next, just to go over, and then we'll have that scheduled once we know that we have a good draft to bring before council for discussion and input on. So at the latest, April 17th, hopefully April 3rd if we can get that, but.
And what is your deadline in the city clerk's office for something like this?
So our deadline for city council agenda items.
No, for the election.
We could go to August 1st if we had to. Packet pickup will be August 2nd, and that's kind of our official start for municipal elections. Like I said, whenever you made this motion, we have our calendar ready. Just whenever council wants to finalize those deadlines, we'll push that out and be ready. I mean, to give candidates and the public some time, May or June would probably be like a drop dead deadline for getting that information updated out to the public and stuff like that. But I mean, I think April or May is completely doable. If that's in your kind of thinking whenever you made the motion.
Thank you very much.
Perfect, thank you.
That's it.
Any other questions or comments regarding this? Thanks, sir. Appreciate that. Did you have other reports to give?
Just a couple of very quick updates. As we talked about with the MyC3 updates, we talked about the tool trailer that's available for residents to use and being able to maintain their property. Obviously, we have one tool trailer. We have purchased a second. We are currently working on fully stocking that additional trailer. We plan on doing a soft launch on April 17th. Staff is currently working on an advertisement plan, marketing plan for that tool trailer out to the community, which we hope to have completed by April 3rd. And then with that soft rollout, we then plan on doing a full city launch May 1st. With respect to weeds under the MyC3, staff is currently working on a weed plan, a mowing schedule, which will help the community identify where staff will be for properties that is under its control and where we are mowing and the time and the number of times that we will be mowing that property over the course of the growing season, as I call it. We will also be providing additional information on what our open space restoration activities will also be. It is our intent that all of these activities and information will be shared with the community, but also provided to the council as it relates to our strategy, to the schedule, and once again, to our activities during that 6 to 7 month period. So we are gearing up for that as well before the weed season really starts to kick in here in May. We are also working with our partners, particularly in one case, CDOT, on an IGA that will allow for us also to help maintain those areas that we've seen that are in need of some tender loving care. You all may have also been made aware that we have stood up our hotshot crew. That is 2 individuals in a truck driving around the city looking for debris, looking for large items, looking for other aspects that may be impeding our right-of-ways, whether that's trails, sidewalks, roadways. And we are at least doing that a minimum of 1 time a week, but we'll be looking at other opportunities to increase that as we continue to staff up for that to be a more robust operation. I would say in the last week, we found our staff actually looked at it twice, from miscellaneous debris to large quantities, minor debris, furnitures along different avenues, 50th and Forest, Potomac and 96, Ivy and 48th, in and around the Fairfax Park area. So our staff is out there, but we're going to try to do a better job of reporting out on what our activities are with the hotshot crew, and once again, trying to meet expectations of doing our part with respect to aesthetics and beautification of the city. And with that, I end my report, sir.
Thanks, sir. Does anybody on council have any questions for Mr. Rogers? Councilmember Kim.
Thank you for the report, Mr. Rogers. The question I have is regarding the holiday signs and those wonderful signs that are out there, whether it's in Derby, up north, Highway 2, wherever you want to call it. I believe you had briefly mentioned it to me that it was going to be taken care of this month, but I'd like to get a more confirmed.
Yes, sir. The twinkle lights as far as the snowflake removal should have been completed as of last week. I believe staff is going on and double checking that. As it relates to the signs, they are still shooting for the end of this month.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Rogers, for your report as well. I was just curious, when you mentioned the hop shop, are they responsible also for cleaning or watching Vasquez also for that cleanup area?
The hot shot, great question. The hot shot crew, purpose and intent is to survey the entirety of the city. Now, obviously, when it gets into other rights of ways, that's where it becomes a judgment call, and hopefully being able to work with our various partners, being the railroad or CDOT, and being able to pick up that debris and furniture. But obviously, Vasquez, 112th, 120th, Tower, you name it, it is the purpose and the job for them to be driving and traversing those roadways, looking for those items. There will be a much larger marketing and branding of those efforts that our staff is working on, that will be able to communicate out to the community to be able to have an immediate response. But as we continue to stand that up through the various resources, in the interim, they will be doing this until that time.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Noble?
Thank you. Mr. Rogers, Adams County is opening their Veterans Memorial Park at 10 a.m. on Memorial Day, and that's when we typically have our Memorial Day parade. How is that situation going to be resolved? Or are there any plans? Are we just going to be going on at the same time?
I think Mr. Huntington heard the call, so he is more than willing to respond since he's been taking charge.
Thank you for the question. We did engage with Adams County staff on that very topic, and we actually just got a notification last week that the commissioners of Adams County had, well, I should back up. The idea from staff, first off, was, is there a way to deconflict the two events? Obviously, first and foremost, that was the primary goal. And we heard back from Adams County staff last week that the commissioners had elected to move forward with their planned time of 10 a.m. We did discuss that on the Memorial Day Parade Committee last week and discussed some possibilities. And Councilmember Hurst can feel free to jump in here if I'm misrepresenting anything that was said. But I think generally the thought from the committee was that moving the parade to in the afternoon or something along those lines was not preferable for lots of different reasons, including tradition, what the residents are used to, including having folks out on the pavement at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon when it's, liable to be in the 90s or something along those lines. So we weren't crazy about the idea of moving it to the afternoon. We talked about the possibility of potentially adjusting the parade schedule a little bit, but that also does have some logistical concerns in terms of if we try to make it earlier. We're already making it an early morning for folks who are registering, signing up, the volunteers and their arrival as well. So at this time, it is looking like those two events would be conflicting based on where we stand today.
And other than the pandemic, how many years has Commerce City hosted the Memorial Day Parade at that time?
This will be the 57th annual since 1964.
And I do have to say that I wish our colleagues in Adams County had made a different decision, given that we are within their county and have been doing this for that many years. So thank you for trying to work it out with them.
Thank you.
I do have another question for you, Mr. Rogers. We received the sustainability plan from the consultants last month, and we had no discussion about it. I asked about having a study session on elements within it so that we could prioritize what we wanted to move forward with, and I did not see that on the study session agenda. Did I miss it?
That discussion will be a part of the May 8th about our environmental equitable priorities. We will loop in that report from our consultant who worked with our EPAC on that presentation of various recommendations.
Okay, so it's May 8th?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I did a keyword search and I didn't come up with sustainable or environmental, so something went wrong. Thank you.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Just going to caveat on the disappointment of the conflicting events on Memorial Day. quite confident that if this was an election year for those county commissioners, that they would have made that change so they could march in our parade, especially after some of them made such a ballyhoo about the fact that we considered not allowing political campaigns to march in our parade last year and how much that was going to affect them. So shame on you, county commissioners. Interim City Attorney Geiger.
Just a couple of things. One positive note, I think you all were informed by Mr. Hayter with respect to the kind of soap opera litigation, the DeTero case, individual had sued Commerce City, even though Commerce City police officers weren't actually involved in the underlying incident, and the case had gone through state court, court of appeals, federal district court, and the 10th Circuit. Happy to report that the case has been dismissed. The appeal's been dismissed from the 10th Circuit. The city has gotten its motion for attorney's fees granted, as well as sanctions against the plaintiff's attorney. So we're all hoping that is actually over. And then I meant to just bring this up earlier. If you all, for those of you who are attending the conference in DC, if you have particular meetings or positions you wanted to just bring up that aren't on the schedule, the Exhibit A for the DC schedule, it would probably be best to just chat about that now. I don't know if that's relevant, but meant to discuss that earlier. Just for council to officially move on if there are official positions or anything like that that you all anticipate needing to take or other meetings you need to attend.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody have any questions for our interim city attorney? Seeing none, any council members wishing to make a report? Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted everyone to know, last Friday, I attended the ribbon cutting ceremony at the Oak Street Health Clinic, and was really exciting. Looks really like it's going to be a really neat clinic coming into the city, so I really enjoyed the event and wanted to welcome them to Commerce City. That's all I had. Thank you.
Councilmember Noble.
Thank you very much. I attended the Pennock Center fundraiser on Saturday night. That was a wonderful event for helping mental health. They have a long history, and it was their anniversary. I also spoke at Second Creek Elementary on Friday to 2 different classrooms of children, and I really want to thank the communications department and especially Alondra Gonzalez Carrillo, who is our graphic artist. She produced 2 wonderful posters for me that I thought would be helpful for the children and any other citizens of Commerce City to see what Commerce City looks like and where our landmarks are. And in addition, there is an organizational chart as well. So we have, that's in English and Spanish. And I promised the students in both classrooms that I would read off their recommendations to make Commerce City better. My topic at their request was municipal government and Commerce City. So here's what they would like to do to make Commerce City better. Video games, a kitty, a dog, no littering, a swimming pool, messy, soccer balls, a spider, the biggest bird, Jesus, big donuts and sugar-free donuts, these were 2 different kids, a pet store, free Vivat, more games, better water, freedom, free food, more money, more coffee, you be president. I think that only came up because my hair is white and they're studying George Washington right now. More games, more recess, more pencils, helpness, and I think he was referring to helpfulness, more respect, and kindness. And finally, I'd like to mention on behalf of the teachers that they asked for another grocery store. I said they couldn't do that because they weren't under 18, but I'll go ahead and mention that anyway. So that was really wonderful. I also attended the Cultivando reveal of their report for the last year. It was very, very disturbing to see everything that was shared and all the dangers that our residents in South Commerce City live among. And that segues then to an invitation I received to the National League of Cities Conference to speak on a panel. That panel is the Federal Clean Energy Funding for Cities and Towns. And that panel will be on Sunday at 2 p.m. Thank you.
Councilmember Douglas?
Thank you. I also attended the Cultivando Reveal, and it was very, very enlightening, but it also showed what the power of the people can bring forward just by having their voices being heard and speaking up for themselves to make sure that this time the community members were in charge of finding the scientists and the people who could actually monitor in behalf of the community and not for the producers of the pollution. And that's typically what happens, is that the monitors are not put forward by the community, but those who are in authority of the community. And so I think we need to take note of it, and we need to consider working in partnership with them going forward, because they are community members. I also went to the Pennock Center benefit, and it was a hoot. They did a 40th anniversary celebration, and so I missed the memo to show up in 80s garb. So I was dressed and everyone else looked fantastic, and I just looked normal. So it was really fun to see. I didn't get to stay very long, but that was great. Had to miss the Youth Commission meeting because, excuse me, I wasn't feeling well, and I didn't want to expose the youngsters to what I've been dealing with for the last week. I would also ask that, I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but I would really like to be excused from the rest of the meeting. And if I could get that permission, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kim?
Before I get into mine, I would like, if it's, I don't know, do we need to take a motion or something to excuse Miss Councilmember Douglas? Because I know she's not feeling well. I mean, okay, got it. Couple things on my part. Same with Councilmember Noble. I attended Second Creek Elementary back on March 2nd. Was able to talk to the children out there regarding my military life. And of course, all the same questions I got was, you know, did you fly planes? Did you shoot a gun? Have you been to Iraq? Have you been to Afghanistan? Have you been to all these wonderful desert sandboxes that I know probably Mayor Huseman has and I have done in the past? Great time. Huge shout out to the teacher, Miss Pelster, Amber Pelster from Second Creek, for actually putting this together all together. Really appreciate it. And then I want to thank City Manager Rogers with regards to, I had an opportunity to go out to Kemp Elementary with regards to their icing over issues that they had. I know Mr. Rogers is fully aware of it, along with the photos were sent to him with regards to that issue, and thank you for addressing it to get the staff working on a plan essentially to get that work through. Two other things I just want to throw out there too. On April 1st, actually one other thing is that the Quality Community Foundation is throwing on an 80s prom at Bison Ridge. Starts at 7 o'clock. It's 80s prom. I will be there. My wife and I will be there, dressed up in our wonderful 80s garb. So hopefully you guys will be there or other people will be there as well. But please spread the word that they have a live band, I believe, and a few other things too. So it'll be a good time. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Councilmember Hurst.
Yeah, not much of a report, just wanted to call out some attendance. So there was voted on change for Cultural Council to change their monthly meeting days. And so now it's simultaneous to the PRG meetings as well on a monthly basis. So I'm on both. And so what I'm committed to now is like switching off back and forth, one on each month. But I think in the near future, I'll try to come up with a motion that maybe we do some rotation so they can have full coverage each time. But like tomorrow, I'm going to Cultural Council to make sure that they have quorum. So I will not be at PRG.
Councilmember Chacon.
I had a couple quick reports. On Friday, I believe I attended the Mount Blue Sky Renaming at Colorado History Museum. That worked for the past 4 years with the Mestihiaje Coalition with Clear Creek County to actually rename and reclaim their mountains there. And I highly recommend working within that space to start having more forms of cultural responsiveness even here in Commerce City. There's a lot of really great spaces that we could understand geographically and even how it relates now to communities that would be really helpful. We had the Yuma youth, the Southern youth, the Cheyenne, the Arapaho, and the Northern Cheyenne also all attend there. So it was a really great opportunity to be within that space within community. It was also the Denver Powwow. So we were also able to have a lot of conversations about how to include not just indigenous communities, but a lot of different mixed communities with a lot of equity frameworks when we're talking about that, especially when it pertains to education and environmental justice. And then I also went to, I believe it was the 56th anniversary of his death, but it was Luis Junior Martinez. He was part of the Chicano rights movement here in Colorado, especially also up through Commerce City. His brother actually lives in Commerce City right now as a real estate agent. So he is actually part of the reason why I'm even able to be in council in that way and even represented in this space. So I just wanted to throw that out there. He was a really pivotal, great organizer and died very, very young, but they still commemorate him on the east side, and it was a really great space to be in that as well. And any way that I can be and expand, especially education and the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Commission, I would really like to be added to or included in that space. So I just wanted to throw those out there.
Are there any other reports? All right, before we go on to our next item, just want to, Councilmember Douglas, if you needed to leave, you were welcome to leave. Oh, no, you're fine. All right, we're going to move on to our executive sessions. I'll ask for a motion and a vote for each session separately. First, I'm looking for a motion second to enter an executive session of the City Council pursuant to CRS Section 24-6-402, parentheses 4, sub-parentheses F and I, for the discussion of personnel matters, specifically to conduct a formulary session to establish performance standards and the manner of performance evaluations of the city manager. Councilmember Kim?
I second. Sorry, yeah, I'm to make that motion, yes.
I have a motion to enter an executive session for the purposes stated. Is there a second? Councilmember Noble.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to go into executive session for the purpose stated. Is there any discussion? Mayor Pro Tem.
My previous concerns is now all the council members, like previously, we waited since we lost another council member, so is everyone okay with that, or? Okay, then that's all, is my only concern.
Councilmember Hurst.
Yeah, I think we do this every time. I think it's an equal concern for all, but my concern is starting to switch to like being fair to Jason. You know, like give him this time of day. It seems to be hard, whether it's because of, it's cold season or whatever the case, to get us, all 9 of us here right now. And so maybe we can have part of the discussion and leave it a bit open-ended to allow us to add some more with Jason's approval, but, start the discussion tonight.
Councilmember Kim.
Agree with Councilmember Hurst. I think that's something we need to do. We're at this point now where we have pushed this so long, so many times because we don't have anybody here or not everybody's here at the same time. So I think we really need to go in and just start talking about it. Let's get it on the books. I think with the two council members that are currently out, they can always take a relook at at whatever it is that we come up with to provide their inputs as well. Makes sense, and let's get this going. Let's get this draft going.
Councilmember Noble.
I agree.
All right, motion second to go into executive session to discuss our city manager's performance evaluation process and establish performance standards. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion will carry unanimously, 7-0, 2 excused absences. Next up, we have a motion and I'm looking for a motion and a second to enter into executive session of the City Council pursuant to CRS Section 24-6-402, parentheses 4, sub-parentheses F, for the purposes of discussing personnel matters specifically related to the appointment and recruitment of a city attorney, and also pursuant to CRS Section 24-6-402, parentheses 4, sub-parentheses E and I, to determine positions subject to negotiations and instruct negotiators with regard to the same. Mayor Pro Tem.
So moved.
Councilmember Kim.
Second.
I have a motion second to go into executive session for the purposes stated. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, 7-0, 2 excused absences. All right, before entering into executive session, I'm looking for a motion and a second to automatically adjourn the meeting following the executive session. Mayor Pro Tem.
So moved.
Councilmember Kim.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to automatically adjourn the meeting following the executive session. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, 7-0 with 2 excused absences. Council will not be returning to take action following the executive sessions. The meeting will be immediately adjourned following the executive session. The meeting broadcast and recording will be ended at this time. Have a good night, have a good week. There is no meeting next week, so we will see you all on April 3rd for our next regularly scheduled council meeting. See you there.